face behind the narco tests that you see on national television and many high-profile cases that she has handled over the years. In fact, over 8,000 cases where Dr. S. Malini has played an important role in unraveling information. While, of course, the entire aspect of legality in terms of whether evidence and statements recorded under narco are admissible in a court as evidence or not is under debate. But there's no doubt about the fact that in many an investigation, the narco test methodology has helped investigators from crimes to acts of terror. To talk about that and how it can help in the present case where the Aaftab murder accused is also going to be subjected to a narco test, and the court has given permission for the same. I have with me Dr. S. Malini. Dr. Malini, thank you so much for joining us here on Times Now and in your very first television interview. Let me begin by asking you, ma'am, in this particular case of Aaftab that, is the talk of the nation, the court has given permission for a narco test. In the instant case, do you see the narco test being important from the point of view of investigation?
Yes, definitely. This will help us to identify those aspects which are not come to the surface yet. Like, for example, the skull region where he has hidden, or any of the weapons, exactly the same weapon he has used, or any other weapons, or any other information. Were there any associates for him, or what is the motive behind this? And from when he was planning all these can be surfaced when he is subjected to narco analysis. And I say that it is a humane method of extracting the information from the person, from non-cooperative sources.
Right. It's a humane method. It's very important. But before I get into the specifics of the Aaftab case, can you explain to our viewers what exactly is the process for the narco? There is a drug that is administered. How does it exactly work? And what are really the challenges while conducting a narco test?
The drug called pentothal sodium is being administered during the narco analysis test. It is an anesthesia drug and it is a safe drug. So far, I told you I have conducted around 8,000 narco analysis. Not even a secondary infection has been seen in all those cases. When it is intravenously administered to the body, it travels throughout the body and make the person enter into a state of trance. In a state of trance, the person cannot hide the information, cannot manipulate the information. All his cognitive functions will be temporarily shut down. Then he starts revealing the information related to the case under investigation. This helps us to extract the information, truthful information during that case, related to that particular case. So the narco analysis will be very helpful to extract such information, genuine information, truthful information during the trance state. And it is a drug that is administered for anesthesia purpose, for all surgical purpose, and it is administered only 1/4 of the what is being given to the operation purpose, surgery purpose. So it is a safe drug and doesn't cause any harm to the body, no, not even a side effects to the body. And it is very humane. We need not have to beat him. The moment we identify the trance state, start asking a particular question relevant to the case, or just start with one stimulus, he start giving out the information.
So is the stimulus, often we see you, talking to the person and sort of patting them or slapping them on the cheek. Is that the stimulus that you're talking about?
No. No slapping will be done. I am telling you, it is a humane method. It is only he enters into a sleep stage, bring him back to the trance state, we tap him on the cheek. So it is not, the stimulus is asking him the starting question related to the case. The moment you start with the case, stimulus or relevant to the case, then he start revealing all the information connected to the case.
Right. And is there a challenge? Because, if the drug is not administered in the correct dosage, is there also a risk of the person going completely drugged or unresponsive? Has that also happened?
No, not so far. Because the drug being administered is a very safe drug. And it is only 1/4 of what that has been administered for surgery purpose.
Let me get into some specifics of the Aaftab case now, ma'am, because, as we know, the polygraph test is being conducted now. It is, of course, as we know, commonly known as the lie detector test. There is also, of course, the narco test that is scheduled, but there's a third test called the brain mapping that is also conducted. Is it through the polygraph and the brain mapping that you get to know the critical points which can be posed to the person through the course of the narco test?
Polygraph test, actually it tells whether the person is deceptive or non-deceptive, whether he has any information. Brain mapping test gives us an information whether he has directly participated in the crime. There is a primary encoding of responses in the brain when he directly participates in the crime. So that helps us to identify, exactly pinpoint, this is the person who is directly involved in the case. So once we subject him for polygraph and brain mapping test, it becomes easy to handle him in narcoanalysis test. So narcoanalysis test, we just start giving him the stimulus, whatever he has given us, the information in polygraph or brain mapping, the same question we can start with, because we do not know what information he contains. So once we start asking him the question relevant to the stimulus in narcoanalysis, he starts giving out the information. So both polygraph and brain mapping will be useful in conducting the narcoanalysis test.
Right. Also, ma'am, in this instant case of Aaftab, if I can just bring you to that. Now, from what we understand is that there are multiple versions that Aaftab has told the investigators or the police about as far as this entire case is concerned. How do you see, as you mentioned earlier, the murder weapon, the skull, all of these could be clinchers in solving the case. How do you see the narco test helping in that regard?
It will help him from where did he get the weapon from, where he has hidden the weapon, if he has hidden the weapon, or which part of the forest that he has disposed the skull, or what exactly is the motive behind this. Was there any plan previously? From where did he purchase the weapon from? Was there anybody who has guided him? Has he taken any help from any other person other than himself? So all this information, what was the reason for him to go to that extreme? Was she causing was there any problem between them? All this will be very useful in extracting them through narcoanalysis test.
Right. Ma'am, and in your view, individuals such as this who are well educated, who may be articulate and who may in fact have a tendency to deceive the investigators, in that sense, narco can in fact play an important role in actually breaking the roadblocks that the investigation may have reached.
Definitely, because the person cannot control. When the drugs start entering into his body, the brain started disseminating in the body, it is not possible for him to control. It is beyond his control. There is no voluntary control. He enters into a trance state, he has to reveal the information. Whether he is an educated person, because in so many cases, the people before subjecting for narcoanalysis, they have subjected themselves for narcoanalysis, they have been tutored, they have been trained. When you enter into a trance state, you have to reveal only this information. So there are so many people who have undergone training and they have come to the narcoanalysis to us. So during that stage, they cannot hold the information, and there is no voluntary control. He starts revealing the information when you exactly identify the trance stage and start asking them the information related to the case.
Right. And one of the aspects that many are looking at is, particularly given the fact that there was a complaint letter written by the victim, in this case Shraddha, that she's being threatened with physical violence, that Aaftab has allegedly threatened to chop her into pieces. All of this raises the question about whether this is premeditated or whether it happened in the heat of the moment, because Aaftab has told the court that whatever happened at that moment happened in the heat of the moment. Could the narco shed more light on that aspect?
Definitely, because she has already written that. He says that it is heat of the moment, but how did she come to know that he will have that type of plan at the heat of the moment? She has already written that. So when did he plan? From how long he has been planning? And what was the reason to plan like that? Why did he go to that extreme stage of cutting her into pieces? All this will be whether he has some sadistic approach, whether he enjoyed. There are so many people who used to say that they used to enjoy the gush of blood. So whether he has that type of tendency in his brain to see the blood flowing out of the body. So all this can be identified through narcoanalysis.
Right. And this is very important where you mention these sadistic tendencies, because Shraddha has told her friends, she has told her family members, or how she was beaten up time and again. Doctors have testified that she came bruised to them for treatment, all sorts of marks on her face, on her nose, so on and so forth. So this could display a tendency of an individual to carry out such acts of violence in the past also. And that is very important to establish how this tendency of violence in this particular individual began, particularly whether it was just related to this case or even outside.
Yes, whether it is his personality problem, whether he had this tendency from the very beginning, whether he has nurtured it and he has grown that tendency in himself, all that will be very easy to identify through narco analysis.
Right.
So, or any other cases he has committed like this. So we have seen some cases where they have butchered the dogs even before conducting the trial for humans. So this also can be brought to the surface.
Right. Ma'am, there's also a theory that, perhaps Aaftab could have been intoxicated at the time of committing the act. Will that in any way impinge on the narco if he is asked to imagine or rebuild those moments which led up to the actual act?
See, for polygraph and brain mapping, if a person is intoxicated at the time of committing crime, may not be very easy to extract the information. Whereas in narco, those who are drug addict or those who are had alcohol addiction, it is very easy to extract the information. They go to the same site of brain where the alcohol also functions. So it is very easy to extract the information when at the time of committing the crime, whether they have intoxicated or they have a habit of consuming alcohol while committing such crime. All this information can be extracted.
Right.
And it is very easy in narco analysis.
Right. Ma'am, in this case, we also see that Aaftab brings Shraddha to Delhi. They stay in this flat in Chhatarpur where, in fact, the neighbors say they've not even seen Shraddha because within just 72 hours, she is allegedly murdered. So the larger question of whether Shraddha was brought to the national capital just for the purpose of murder is also one that has been plaguing many who have been reading about this story. Do you think there could be some kind of, closure on that question as well through a narco test?
Yes, definitely. Narco analysis can extract this information whether she was brought to the apartment only for that purpose, or whether he planned and has taken the house for rent for doing this purpose, for committing her crime, for committing her murder. All this information can be extracted through narco analysis.
Right, right. The Arushi case was another similar case which was very, very high profile, and in fact the role of the Talwars was there, but the narco test brought out the role of those who were the domestic servants. How significant was, in fact, and how challenging was this experience, because it was under the face of intense media scrutiny that this narco test was carried out?
Actually, when the servants were brought, the idea was that the parents are involved. That was what spread throughout, saying that the parents are involved. So when we subjected them for narco, actually even before narco analysis, pre-narco interview, they said that they have done it. And in fact, one person drew a cookery design and said that he used this particular weapon for committing the crime. So we wanted to test whether he actually has done it or he is just telling that. But when we subjected them for polygraph, brain mapping, and then subjected them for narco analysis test. In the narco analysis test, they said that how they entered into their house, how they entered into the Arushi's room, how did they go to Hemraj, and to whom the first murder was committed, and later how did they come back and committed the Arushi's murder, and how did they go back. They also said that how the tissues that were drenched in blood, how it was disposed, and how did they take the mobile phones also. All this information was revealed, and it was stage by stage. How the action was carried on was revealed very clearly, which made us to come to the conclusion that the parents are not involved. It is only the domestic servants who are involved.
But they were later let off
the
because
details, they were able to give a clear account of how
the domestic servants were later let off, ma'am. How do you think that happened?
Clear account of the murder.
Right.
See, crime, the evidences, they have to search and get the evidences. The evidences connecting to the crime was not found. The mobile phones that they said that they have carried were not impossible to trace. So hence, I think they must have let off because of this reason.
Right. Ma'am, another very, very important case was that of Safdar Nagori, because for the very first time, the role of Pakistan was actually, caught on tape. It was caught on camera. And that created a huge sensation, an uproar in Parliament even, as to why the matter was not properly probed. What do you think prevented it from reaching the logical conclusion and the role of Pakistan from really being nailed in terms of the investigation into this issue?
I don't have any information related to this, But I can only say that Safdar Nagori has told us in a very clear detail about how the training takes place, what level, what stages the training take place, how the people, in what route they come to the Pakistan, and what are the stages of training, and how the weapon trainings are being given, and how they do the targeting, and how people come to enter into India, in what route they enter into India, what will be the financial assistance to them, and how will be the logistic support that will be given to them, to the local people, and who are the local people. All this information he has given us, Safdar Nagori has given. But why it did not take a logistic turn, I don't know. I can't tell you about this.
Right, right. Ma'am, I also want to get into some of the more basic questions relating to the narco test itself. One of the challenges remains that courts say that you can do the narco test for the purposes of investigation, but the statements given by the so-called accused in any particular case are not admissible as evidence. Would you say that needs to change? What is your view on this? In Selvi versus State of Karnataka, Supreme Court has given a clear indication that it can be used as a collaborative evidence. Like they have very clearly said that the consent of the accused is essential. See, from the day one, whatever, whether it is a polygraph, brain mapping or narco analysis, consent of the person is essential. We have to convince him, we have to tell him about what are the tests that we are subjecting him for, and what will be the consequences of taking such tests. We have to show him the instrument, explain him, and after which we have to take a consent. If he is not willing to undergo the test, we can't physically drag him and subject him. Such unwilling, uncooperative person who is not interested in narco analysis, we can't subject him for narco analysis or even for polygraph or brain mapping test. So during that stage, we have to explain him and take him the consent. So this is what in Selvi versus State of Karnataka, Supreme Court has said. The consent of a person is essential for subjecting him for whether brain mapping test or polygraph or narco analysis test. So after the consent, by obtaining his consent, if we subject him for narco analysis or any other scientific test, then any evidences that has been possible to identify after the narco analysis test, it will be used as a collaborative evidence. And in so many conspiracies, to unearth the conspiracy, it is very useful. How they have planned, with whom they have planned, all this, it may not be possible just by collecting the statement from the person. So through narco analysis, it is possible how the conspiracy has taken place. Right, right. So you're saying there are enough safeguards built in, the court's permission, the consent are enough safeguards to ensure that this technology is not misused?
Yes, definitely. Enough safeguard has been given. I feel like Supreme Court has given a safeguard so that the consent is essential. By force, by threatening them that I'll do this to your family if you don't accept. So all this will not work out. He has to consent and he has to willingly subject himself for narco analysis if he wants to prove that he is an innocent.
Right. Ma'am, also, despite the fact that this investigation tool has yielded results on several cases on several occasions, why is it that the facilities for the same are limited in this country? Because at the moment, I believe it is only the Gujarat FSL that is adequately equipped to conduct narco tests.
Trained personnel are not available. I feel that trained personnel are not available to conduct the narco analysis test. The very important thing in narco analysis is identification of trans state, which not everybody will know. So experienced and trained personnel are required to conduct the narco analysis test. That is the reason why only Gujarat FSL has and no other FSL has. Till 2010, the Bengaluru FSL was leading in narco analysis, after which Gujarat started doing narco analysis test.
Right. So what needs to be done? More infrastructure needs to be ramped up, more training of personnel in this area?
Is required. More training is required. Infrastructure is required. It is very essential that if each FSL should have their own OT facilities to conduct the narco analysis test. They should have the team for conducting the narco analysis test. So then it is possible to not every case should be subjected for narco analysis analysis test.
Right.
And those cases which is very difficult to find out the clues, and those cases which are very important and which investigating agency is finding very difficult, taking long time in conducting the investigation, such cases can be subjected for narco analysis
Right.
test.
Ma'am, as a forensic officer, you have to be independent of the investigating agencies and the prosecution. You have your own role to critically appraise the evidence. And how in that light do you resist pressure coming in from various investigating agencies that may be seeking for you to toe a particular line? How do you sort of maintain your independence? Because we're talking at a time where even police officers, for instance, are finding their way into institutions which are supposed to be meant exclusively for the purposes of forensics.
Court will believe the independent agencies, because we should not be influenced by the police or investigating agency. We have to be an independent agency and not under the control of police, so that it is possible to subject the person independently, without any bias, without any influence, to the narco analysis. We need not have to be influenced by the police nor been influenced by the accused to conduct the narco analysis. We are an independent agency. So by being independent, it will give exact and genuine results by subjecting them for any scientific test.
All right, Dr. Malini, thank you so much for joining us and speaking so frankly about the area of narco analysis, and certainly, of course, an interview that would certainly educate our viewers as to the entire process, as well as the safeguards that have been put in place to ensure that it is not misused. Thank you so much for giving us your time, ma'am.